share with you another dream I had. This dream, you have those dreams that are so real, and I found myself at this school, and I seen a teacher walking out of the school building into his car, and a voice said to me, "Follow him." So I started to follow him, and I seen him as he gets into his car. He was carrying a heap of exercise books, children's exercise books. So he gets into the car and he sits down and he just starts to, he opens the books. It's like the window of the car was open, and the voice said to me, "Observe, just like watch him, watch what he's doing." And so I draw closer, and I seen him open up the exercise books and start to mark them. And at first I'm not really seeing anything, but I just see him ticking away, and he scores it. And then I see him, the next book. This time I really look closely and I see he's ticking everything. When I see one of the math problems was actually incorrect, but he just ticked it anyway. And he ticks everything, and then he puts the total score 55/33. And I'm like, 55/33? That's exactly, the numbers I remember. And I'm like, what? That's insane. Like, who gives 55 out of 33? And as I had this in my mind, I had God's voice speak to me, and God said to me, exactly. That's how I assess your life. And this is how I score you. And even though you get some things wrong, my grace covers over it, and it's over and above. It's above and over enough. His grace is more than sufficient to cover your errors in life, and he always gives you that golden star saying you're brilliant. And and that dream really shook me. Like, really, like, it's hard to imagine, especially in the world we live so much for approval. We live so much for validation. We live so much for acceptance, acknowledgement, and we try, and we can be given to this performance to find our value, but to God, our value is not in our performance and how good we're doing in a day, but it's knowing His value of us that transforms our life. It's like a student considered naughty, in a class. The student they sent to the naughty corner because he's misbehaving, but God doesn't do that. God gives that student a golden star. Suddenly, it changes their behavior because they feel seen and appreciated. Now they want to live in a way to please the teacher, because the teacher accepts them. And that's how God is like. That's how God's grace works. And it's not a misplaced trust at all, because God has so much faith in us. And this is how faith works, basically. This is why God teaches us to love, to love our enemies, to pray for our enemies, to bless those who despite use us. And this is how faith works. There's no, love. Love overcomes evil. Love never fails. That's how it has to be. It's sown in faith. It's done in faith. It's not dependent on the other person's response. And God has so much faith. That's why I just read this verse before of that God demonstrates His love to us, that while we were still sinners, yet we were still sinners, He died for us. And that's before we had a desire to serve Him, to seek His face, to live right, that He chose to die for us. And this gospel is what all brought us to His love, because of God's faith. And God continues to show that faith, because it changes. And that change in how we view ourselves, how we view God, changes our life. When I went to high school, they'll do this occasionally every year when they choose their prefects. They'll just choose one student, even though a student people considered a baddie, or but the teachers would choose to have faith just in one student like this, who they saw potential in, and they made him a prefect. And you would see the change instantly in that person's life, because they were once considered a baddie. Now, they just become the best prefect. And it's so, in a radical way, that they become a leader, because everyone already respects them. So now when they're telling other people, follow the rules, do good, it changes everything. It changes everything. And all the people who used to look up to that person and see that change in that person, it's like how God chose Paul, who was leading people and persecuting the Christians, but how God brought the change in him, and suddenly he's preaching the gospel. Suddenly he's standing for the gospel, ready to face whatever cost. And so this is what God does. He says he is a golden star. He says you're a star. He says I believe in you. And he believes in you before you believe in yourself. That's the way it is. That's the way it goes. Otherwise it will be based on me. That's how I know it's not based on my works. No. But there's an outworking of it after it just changes your heart. My heart was stone. My heart was so close and my heart was stone, until I encountered that love and knew what God's love looks like. And I like to talk about dreams. And some people are not very thinking about, because they're like, oh, the word of God should be the standard of your life, and I agree. And I always go back to the Bible to see where it says that in the Bible, and how God's character is displayed in the Bible. So today the verse I chose is from Matthew 11:29, and it says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls." And here Jesus says, "I am gentle and I'm humble in heart." And this is God. This is one of the passages where Jesus actually describes his character. And I want to encourage you in this, because they say he's approachable. He is approachable. I used to have a fear of God, the way the gospel was presented to me, of fire and brimstone, and I used to have a fear of God that even when I prayed, I didn't want to pray when I was alone. I had this fear that God is unapproachable, and I wouldn't want to be alone with him if God appeared. I had this just a fear that God is unapproachable. But here is Jesus inviting us, and he's like, take my yoke upon you, learn from me, and in order for you to learn from him, you have to, and the concept is that you are, they'll put two cows and they'll put a yoke on them together, so they can draw the plow. So you're yoked to him, and when you're yoked to him, it's like you're walking together. You're sharing the burden of the plowshare. So and when you're walking with him closely, you can learn from him. He says, "Learn from me. I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul." Ain't that a beautiful thing? I hope you're blessed.